of an outline. And what we did is we used lines up here around the edges and the rim of the eye, around the eyelid. Remember, I told you not to do eyelashes, that we could just kind of outline that edge and kind of make it a line. And that was effective. But on the nose, one of the things most people do, especially when they're new to this, is they really want to just outline the nose with dark charcoal. And one of the things I told you at the beginning is the only thing that we cannot fix or undo is making a light area really, really dark. And making a dark outline is really one of those things that does not help us at all. So what I'm going to tell you for the nose, please, please, please resist an outline. For some reason, somebody always does it, and it's always something that I cannot fix after the fact. Like for the bridge of the nose on this particular drawing, there is no line. Where my finger is working right now, we do not have a hard edge line. There's a little bit of lightness here that almost forms an edge, but how would I make that lightness with a piece of charcoal? All I could do is come back and erase that in. So I want you to keep in mind is, do not have the intention of coming in, I'm just going to outline the nose, I'll outline this. You'll make a mess of your face. We need to focus on looking at the picture more carefully and trying to see all the little subtle shades of gray. So in this case, we can't really do the nose without doing the cheek. All right, this side, this cheek, there's a lot of light and shadow. This is the darker side of her face based on how the lighting came in. And again, when we're blending on our faces, one of the things I said around the eye is to follow the sort of, like if you were sort of rubbing your own eyelid, well, on the cheek is the same thing. Follow your hand around this and blend it as if you're rubbing your own face and you're trying to rub with the sort of shape and texture of your cheek. So I'm going to start off with some basic gray here just to get going. Now, how do we see this nose? We see this nose, and we see it because there are subtle changes from light to dark. When I say the word subtle, I mean that they're not like obvious. They're not super duper dark or outlined and stuff like that. They're very light and faint. And what we want to do is we want to kind of find those edges and bring them out. Right here on the top of the nostril, you can see the difference between the top of the nostril and the back part of her cheek, because the back part of her cheek has this lightness there, and there's a little bit of an edge here. Now I've created that little bit of an edge without outlining it. Now if that edge disappeared when you tried to blend it in, you could always take your kneaded eraser and kind of shape it up. When I look at this part of the nostril, I'll see that it's very, very light. And really what makes it stand out is that it's really dark on the cheek behind it. And for many of you, you have the same kind of thing happening in your lighting, is that your cheek ends up looking very dark, and it's darker than the nostril, and that's what makes it stand out. So the only way I can do that is try to bring a dark value right up against a light one, and keeping that clean edge. Now, if I lose that edge, I can always use my eraser to kind of shape it up a little bit. But you can see right there, I've created a real distinction between the nostril and the cheek without just making one dark line. And that's, again, what I'm telling you guys to avoid is outlining stuff. We don't see lines, especially on the in and around the nose, really. We don't really see them there. We kind of see them around the eyes because of the creases, but we don't see them on the nose. If I'm looking underneath here, where the nostril actually is, there's a lot of gray going on. And I know that there's a dark, there's a hole for the nostrils right over there, but I can't really make those light spots until I put down a little bit of gray. So I'm going to blend a little bit of that in there first. If I look at the edge of this thing down at the bottom, I'll see the nostril itself is a little bit lighter than the skin beneath it, the skin that's part of the upper lip, or the start of the upper lip. So again, I want to kind of shade accordingly. And then if I have to use my kneaded eraser, I'm going to wedge that out until I pinch it into a nice clean edge. And I'm going to kind of work that to sort of reshape the bottom of this. Okay? I might see some light little highlights. One of the reasons I made all this gray area is to come back in and add my little highlights. And again, those highlights and things are subtle, but they can't happen unless we have some gray over there. Now we do have a real crisp edge here for the nostril. We can actually make a little bit of a line, but I'm going to fill in beneath it and then just kind of pull that shading downwards so it kind of fades out from that top part. I'll go ahead and darken in some of that, not all of it, And one of the things people tend to also do is make their nostrils a lot bigger than they need to be. All right? I'm going to do a little more shaping up. If I look at the tip of the nose on the bottom here, I'll realize that underneath the tip of the nose, the skin on the upper lip in this particular picture is a little bit darker, so I'll make sure that I'm going back in and adding that value. Your job right now is to find those subtleties. The drawing and shading of this picture, technically, for me, actually gets harder and harder as you work your way down. That's why we started with the forehead. The forehead, in a lot of ways, was the easiest part. The eyes were definitely a bigger challenge, but I think the nose is even harder because the nose requires you to kind of not outline and be sort of subtle and look for those subtleties. Now, you might have been able to get away with doing the eyes without doing a lot of great shading around them, but you can't really do the nose without doing all the shading that you see around it as well. So my advice is take your time on the nose. I'm pretty good at this, and this has taken me 6 minutes to do, okay? I don't think anybody's going to do their whole nose in 6 minutes, and for that matter, I've only done half of it, all right? I have a whole other half to do over there. But I want you to see that what I've done so far has been done basically without a heavy outline and by getting all those little slight little shades of gray. Now, if you don't get those little shades of gray in there, you're never going to be able to kind of pull this thing off. So one of the things I'll tell you is you should work first, obviously, on the cheeks. Get a little bit of gray. Look at your picture. Your picture may be a little bit darker or a little bit lighter than what I'm working on. But again, we're going to need to work on those light shades of gray first. Then I come in and kind of work on the darker spots. After I've done with the darker spots, the last thing I do is I start erasing in either little details or making those little dark parts. When we're working on this thing, it's a lot like when we're working on the bottle. Basic stuff first. The little details of the cap were the last thing we're going to do. So again, take your time and look for those subtle little changes in light and dark, and avoid, like the plague, the feeling or desire to come in there and just make a dark line. There is no dark line on this side. This is all just going to be light gray meeting dark gray. Go ahead and